there, students. How's it going? I hope you've all been enjoying your summer. And I know I haven't done one of these in a little while, but as we're gearing up for another bout of distance learning come the fall, I wanted to start doing some more readings for you guys from Irish, uh, Celtic, Nordic, Hawaiian, etc. Uh, mythologies, like I was doing towards the end of last year. So I'm going to get back into the habit of doing that again today. And we're going to start with a story from our Hawaiian Legends of Ghosts and Ghost Gods by William D. Westervelt. I'm going to open it up here. Today's story is called The Strange Banana Skin. Kukali, according to the folklore of Hawaii, was born at Kalapana, the most southerly point of the largest island of the Hawaiian group. Kukali lived hundreds of years ago, in the days of the migrations of Polynesians from one group of islands to another, throughout the length and breadth of the Great Pacific Ocean. He visited strange lands, now known under the general name Kahiki, or Tahiti. Here he killed the great bird Halulu, found the deep bottomless pit in which was a pool of the fabled water of life, married the sister of Halulu, and returned to his home. All this he accomplished through the wonderful power of a banana skin. Kukali's father was a priest, or kahuna, of great wisdom and ability, who taught his children how to exercise strange and magical powers. To Kukali he gave a banana with the impressive charge to preserve the skin whenever he ate the fruit, and be careful that it was always under his control. He taught Kukali the wisdom of the makers of canoes, and also how to select the fine-grained lava for stone knives and hatchets, and fashion the blade to the best shape. He instructed the young man in the prayers and incantations of greatest efficacy, and showed him charms which would be more powerful than any charms his enemies might use in attempting to destroy him, and taught him those omens which were too powerful to be overcome. Thus, Kukali became a wizard, having great confidence in his ability to meet the craft of the wise men of distant islands. Kukali went inland, through the forests, and up the mountains, carrying no food save the banana, which his father had given him. Hunger came, and he carefully stripped back the skin and ate the banana, folding the skin once more together. In a little while the skin was filled with fruit. Again and again he ate, and as his hunger was satisfied, the fruit always again filled the skin, which he was careful never to throw away or lose. The fever of sea roving was in the blood of the Hawaiian people in those days, and Kukali's heart burned within him, with the desire to visit the faraway lands about which other men told marvelous tales, and from which came strangers, like to the Hawaiians in many ways. After a while, he went to the forest and selected trees approved by the omens, and, with many prayers, fashioned a great canoe in which to embark upon his journey. The story is not told of the days passed on the great stretches of water, as he sailed on and on, guided by the sun, in the day and the stars in the night, until he came to the strange lands about which he had dreamed for years. His canoe was drawn up on the shore, and he lay down for rest. Before falling asleep, he secreted his magic banana in his malo, or loincloth, and then gave himself to deep slumber. His rest was troubled with strange dreams, but his weariness was great, and his eyes heavy, and he could not arouse himself to meet the dangers which were swiftly surrounding him. A great bird which lived on human flesh was the god of the land to which he had come. The name of the bird was Halulu. Each feather of its wings was provided with talons, and seemed to be endowed with human powers. Nothing like this bird was ever known or seen in the beautiful Hawaiian Islands. But here, in the mysterious foreign land, it had its deep valley, walled in like the valley of the Arabian Nights, over which the great bird hovered, looking into the depths for food. A strong wind always attended the coming of Halulu, when he sought the valley for his victims. Kukali was lifted on the wings of the bird god and carried to this hole and quietly laid on the ground to finish his hour of deep sleep. When Kukali awoke, he found himself in the shut-in valley, with many companions who had been captured by the great bird and placed in his prison hole. They had been without food and were very weak. Now and then, one of the number would lie down to die. Halulu, the bird god, would perch on a tree which grew on the edge of the precipice, and let down its wing to sweep across the floor of the valley and pick up the victims lying on the ground. Those who were strong could escape the feathers as they brushed over the bottom and hide in the crevices in the walls. But day by day, the weakest of the prisoners were lifted out and prepared for Halulu's feast. Kukali pitied the helpless state of his fellow prisoners and prepared his best incantations and prayers to help him overcome the great bird. He took his wonderful banana and fed all the people until they were very strong. He taught them how to seek stones best fitted for the manufacture of knives and hatchets. Then for days they worked until they were all well armed with sharp stone weapons. While Kukali and his fellow prisoners were making preparation for the final struggle, the bird god had often come to his perch and put his wing down into the valley, brushing the feathers back and forth to catch his prey. Frequently, the search was fruitless. At last, he became very impatient and sent his strongest feathers along the precipitous walls, seeking for victims. Kukali and his companions then ran out from their hiding places and fought the strong feathers, cutting them off and chopping them into small pieces. Halulu cried out with pain and anger and sent some feather after feather into the prison. Soon one wing was entirely destroyed. Then the other wing was broken to pieces, and the bird god in his insane wrath put down a strong leg armed with great talons. Kukali uttered mighty invocations and prepared sacred charms for the protection of his friends. After a fierce battle, they cut off the leg and destroyed the talons. Then came the struggle with the remaining leg and claws. But Kukali's friends had become very bold. They fearlessly gathered around his enemy, hacking and pulling until the bird god, screaming with pain, fell into the pit among the prisoners, who quickly cut the body into fragments. The prisoners made steps in the walls, and by the aid of vines, climbed out of their prison. When they had fully escaped, they gathered great piles of branches and trunks of trees and threw them into the prison, until the body of the bird god was covered. Fire was thrown down, and Halulu was burned to ashes. Thus Kukali taught, by his charms, that Halulu could be completely destroyed. But 2 of the breast feathers of the burning Halulu flew away to his sister, who lived in a great hole which had no bottom. The name of his sister was Namakeaha. She belonged to the family of Pele, the goddess of volcanic fires, who had journeyed to Hawaii and taken up her home in the crater of the volcano Kilauea. Namakeaha smelled smoke on the feathers which came to her, and knew that her brother was dead. She also knew that he could have been conquered only by one possessing great magical powers. So she called to his people, "Who is the great Kapua, which means wizard, who has killed my brother? O my people, keep careful watch." Kukali was exploring all parts of the strange land, in which he had already found marvelous adventures. By and by, he came to the great pit in which Namakeaha lived. He could not see the bottom, so he told his companions he was going down to see what mysteries were concealed in this hole without a bottom. They made a rope of the hau tree bark. Fastening one end around his body, he ordered his friends to let him down, uttering prayers and incantations as he went down. And down, until owing to counter incantations of Namakeaha's priests, who had been watching, The rope broke and fell. Down he went swiftly, but, remembering the prayer which a falling man must use to keep him from injury, he cried, "O Ku, guard my life!" In the ancient Hawaiian mythology, there was frequent mention of the water of life. Sometimes the sick bathed in it and were healed. Sometimes it was sprinkled upon the unconscious, bringing them back to life. Kukali's incantation was of great power, for it threw him into a pool of the water of life, and he was saved. One of the kahunas, which means priests, caring for Namakeaha, was a very great wizard. He saw the wonderful preservation of Kukali and became his friend. He warned Kukali against eating anything that was ripe, because it would be poison, and even the most powerful charms could not save him. Kukali thanked him and went out among the people. He had carefully preserved his wonderful banana skin and was able to eat apparently ripe fruit and yet be perfectly safe. The kahunas of the Namakeaha tried to overcome him and destroy him, but he conquered them, killed those who were bad, and entered into friendship with those who were good. At last he came to the place where the great chiefess dwelt. Here he was tested in many ways. He accepted the fruits offered him, but always ate the food of his magic banana. Thus he preserved his strength, and conquered even the chiefess, and married her. After living with her for a time, he began to long for his old home in Hawaii. There he persuaded her to do as her relative Pele had already done, and the family, taking their large canoe, sailed away to Hawaii, their future home. And that concludes the story of the magical banana peel. I thought the title of that one sounded unique, so I was excited to share it, and it did not disappoint, although it was, at times, a bit brutal. One quick thing to note, when I make a translation, it's not coming from personal knowledge, it's coming from what the book says. So, for instance, kahuna, meaning priest. I don't know if kahuna does translate to priest, or if that's more of an archaic translation. Most of the books that I read from are somewhat older, because I want to read items that are in the public domain, so I don't infringe on any sort of copyright or anything like that, just in case. I'd like to be cautious about that. But yeah, that concludes our story. There's many more of these coming. I will continue to read them as we get closer and closer to starting school distance again. And that concludes that. Alright, students, stay happy, stay healthy, and stay in the pursuit of knowledge. Until next time, bye-bye.